meeting to order. First item, approval of June 2nd building committee minutes.
So moved.
You have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 2, facilities update. Mr. Toddy.
Hello.
So moved.
We got a kind of a long agenda, so I will speak quickly. I wanted to just start by sharing I've been talking about custodial openings and job openings, and this note could have gone to personal as well. I was struck by a UNH panel recently, stated that statistically New Hampshire had the highest quit rate in the country. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics pointed out that 1 in 22 New Hampshire employees quit their job, highest in the country. So, and that's what we've been seeing in our custodial openings and all the changeover and the trouble we've had filling it. We still have 3 openings in custodial, and we've been really struggling with people accepting interviews and not showing up for the interview, taking the interview, being offered a job and not calling back, being offered a job, accepting the job and not showing up to work, being offered a job, accepting a job and showing up to work for only a day. We've seen all of those, and we continue to see that. We have 3 openings. We're in good shape right now cleaning for our summer cleaning, and there's a few reasons for that. The first one is we had a really short school year. We got out because of the snow days. We didn't have a lot of snow days, so we got out earlier than we ever have before. We were able to take advantage of an extra week of cleaning. We also had all the materials on hand at the outset of the summer, which allowed us to get immediately to work. And we've been getting a lot of great sub-help from our student population and from our retirees. We've had a lot of people come back. We've had a lot of students joining us for summer work, so that's really great to see. The grounds right now, we're operating at 25% strength. So Mr. Prue and I have kind of become interim grounds guys. So if you see me walking around here in shorts one day, it's because I'm out trying to help out with the ground stuff. Also, Bruce Wheeler came out of retirement and is helping out as a sub-position in grounds. Maintenance, I'm going to start with Chamberlain Street serving line project. We're replacing the serving line, which, if you recall, turned into an asbestos abatement project because of the floor underneath it. So that's in full swing now. What we see here is the old serving line being demoed. Getting everything out of the kitchen, we'll replace the floor and put in a new serving line. The picture on the right is some of the electrics inside the old serving line. You can see the cloth wire there on the right, held together with a big blob of black tape. And there's 220 volts in there. That was in a steel cabinet. Can't have got rid of that piece of equipment soon enough. Happy to see it go. Moving on to the Credo Technology Center. If you recall, we had to replace the Gonic roof because of fire retardant treated truss members that failed. At the time, we identified 3 structures in Rochester schools that have similar roofs: the Tech Center, the middle school, and Gonic. Gonic has been completely replaced. We did a lot of research and did a lot of testing through structural engineers to look at the middle school and to look at the CTE, and we determined that those 2 structures were sound. But to be careful, we set up a monitoring and testing program. So we go up there periodically and check everything. And the most recent inspection we had by a licensed structural engineer was in September of 21. At that time, they observed 2 checks, which are cracks in wood, are called checks. The 2 cracks in the wood they saw went with the grain, which is a very typical pattern. Wood, when it splits with the grain. We recently, just within a week, we found the first ever, what you're seeing in the picture, is a crack in a structural member that goes across the grain. I'm not sounding an alarm here, I'm just pointing it out. Statistically, it's insignificant because it's 1 piece of wood out of literally tens of thousands of linear feet of wood. But it bears noting, this is the first thing we've seen that doesn't look right. This is in the Tech Center above home back. We have the next full inspection where we'll actually sample wood, take it out, send it to the lab, and do strength break tests to see how strong it is. That's not scheduled until 2023. So in abundance of caution, we're bringing a structural engineer back early to walk that roof again, to walk that attic space again, and to look at that. I'm just putting it on your radar. That's the first time we've seen something peculiar in that attic.
What would that entail to replace, if we had to?
When we did the CTA project, we had talked about it at the time, I think it was about $4 million. All the metal would come off, everything would get taken out and down. And if it cost $4 million then, it costs $8 million now. So we're not saying, I'm not at all saying that we have to do that, I'm not at all saying that people should be worried about that. I just want people to know that we are watching this and we do monitor this and we take it very seriously. Speaking of monitoring ceilings, what you're looking at, oh, I'm sorry. Did you?
I do have a question. So, this is the first cross-grain check we found.
Yes.
Obviously documented photographically or whatever.
Yes.
I mean, are we measuring these things? Are we, now does that, it's not an alarm, but it does prompt, bringing in structural engineers sooner, as far as.
Mr. Tyler, you might just want to give just some brief history for folks that weren't with us when this was discovered originally. This is on like an active monitoring system right now. So we have contracted with them to consistently and actively monitor.
Well, what's an active monitoring system?
So they're coming.
Well, also the active monitoring system, when the fire retardant chemicals are put into the wood, the first generation failed spectacularly. Got rid of, that's back in the 60s. The second generation was in the 80s, and that's what we had in Gonic. And some of them failed, some of them didn't. And any of the research is unclear because every single one of the companies that made these products is out of business, and every single one of them was proprietary chemical mixtures, so you can't really test what you don't know what it was. But what was observed through engineering all across the country was that there's a catalyst. There's typically water or heat or some combination of both that would cause these secondary failures. At the time, we had failures in Gonic, we replaced, and we went through structural member by structural member of the middle school and this building. We took samples out and broke them on big machines to measure modulus of strength and elasticity of the wood to determine, is this wood showing any decay? And it wasn't, it was all sound. So I'm not sure what you mean by measurement, like it's one member, we've repaired the one member, we sistered up together and bolted it through, and we're bringing back engineers to walk through it. So the question about on active monitoring at the time, because it's moisture and because it's temperature, we installed humidity and temperature sensors in the attics that report to our building automation system. So we know when, if there's a leak in the roof that might just drip in the attic that you might not know about for a year, we're going to know because we're going to have humidity in the attic, and that's going to trigger a response.
And what prompts the question is, like, the ice arena has a monitoring system on the roof for load because of structural concerns.
Yeah.
For snow load and whatnot. So when I ask what active monitoring is it sensing?
Active monitoring is there are active sensors 24/7 looking at temperature, active sensors 24/7 looking at moisture, and a regular schedule of us going up and walking the attic.
All right,
Great. Nancy Loud, ceiling. What you're looking at in this picture is a plenum. It's a dead space. What looks like a floor in that picture is actually the top of a suspended ceiling just like this one. If you were to pop this suspended ceiling, there'd be some dead space and then the ceiling of the floor above. And Nancy Loud, the ceiling above the suspended ceiling is an old horsehair plaster ceiling, circa 1890. It's horsehair on wood, so I know it's very, very old. And it's failing. The plaster is delaminating from the wood lap and it's falling. And the problem is that the suspended ceiling tiles can't hold the load of plaster. The plaster is extremely heavy. So we're there now, or our crews will be going in next week to, I can't call it a repair because we're not repairing it, it's an emergency response. We're going to take out the suspended ceiling, knock down as much of the plaster as we can that's loose, haul it away, and put the suspended ceiling back. There's more plaster in there, just indicative of a failing infrastructure around Nancy Loud. Just wanted to point that out to you. Spalding High School field storage building, you probably saw it on your ride in. It's we're waiting only for the overhead door to be installed and the final electric. You can see in the picture they still temp service on the electric. When those last two pieces get complete, that building is 100%. State building aid, we filed an application for state building aid. for hopes of possibly a new construction project. That was submitted. There was a July 1st deadline on that, and we made that deadline. I spent some time this week walking some parcels of land in Rochester with a soil engineer to kind of get a feel for some proposed areas. Perhaps something could be built there, perhaps not. Security Action for Education grant opened this week. You might have seen this on the news. We've been watching this for a while. We get updates from the Department of Education when they're well in advance of grants coming out, so we can start thinking about them. This particular grant is an 80-20 grant, like any of the Homeland Security grants that came before. So we would get 80 cents on the dollar spent. The grant is targeting areas of access control, surveillance, and emergency alerting. In the current CIP budget, we have $20,000 that's slated for security. So this grant will give us an opportunity to perhaps take that $20,000 and get $100,000 worth of work done. We're looking at a few projects to submit. The early submittal deadline for that grant is July 22nd, and I plan to have at least one, if not two, submissions in for that grant to do something constructive with that money. Spalding High School auditorium update. The deluge system is here. Yay! Yeah, it's been a while. It's scheduled to be installed early next week, and the remaining light fixtures have a ship date of next week. If that ship date comes to fruition, we're hoping for 100% completion of the Spalding High Auditorium by the end of July. Air Quality Improvement Project, Maple Street Magnet School, we're finishing up. Gonick is starting, and Chamberlain is on deck for moving through new control systems. And we're beginning to coordinate structural steel around some new rooftop units that we'll be putting in the McClellan School to serve the multi-purpose room. Computerized maintenance management system, Master Library, was a vendor that we chose to partner with for our work order ticketing and maintenance work, and we had our first onboarding meeting with them. They gave us all of our homework, which we did through my department and CIC, and we've turned in our homework, and now we're scheduling our next onboarding meeting, which after that we'll get a little bit more homework. By the time that homework is done, we'll be very close to having a fully functioning CMMS. Student parking lot. This was a spring project that we were able to complete. We completely repaved the student parking lot behind the CTE. Another one of the spring projects that we were working on was the lockers at Spalding High School. There's not a lot of opportunity to create personalized learning spaces in the footprint of a hallway that was designed in 1939. But what we do have in abundance is unused lockers. So we thought, well, let's take a bank of lockers like that, and let's demo it and make a hole in the wall, and then let's put some electricity and some tile and some countertops in place to create a little recessed area in the hallway where students can congregate and charge their Chromebooks and do their work. So we did two of these. This one's on the first floor near the chemistry lab. There's another one on the third floor near Ms. Ford's classroom. They're each 18 feet long, and the completed cost for each, including the demo, the structural work on the wall that had to be done, the tile, the countertop, the electric, and the full package, about $10,000 a piece. There were some questions when we were taking this off about the value of the salvage steel. So on both of these, I took both 18-foot banks of lockers myself, brought them to the scrap yard, and got the money myself and brought it back here, and I received a total of $72.10.
No.
So they go in at 10 grand a piece, and we get $35 each back in steel. So don't hang your hopes on the steel being the thing.
They look beautiful though.
They look great, and I'm really excited. The brackets under there are like extra heavy duty with shear strength and pull out strength, and I defy them to tear that countertop down.
Don't give them a,
Don't say that out loud.
how many attempts,
I'm sorry, I don't defy anyone to do that.
how many plugs are there to plug their Chromebook?
There's 10 plugs in that
Like
bank,
every
and
2
that's,
feet, basically?
yeah, and that's on its own dedicated circuit, each one of those, so they can put Chromebooks all the way up and down there.
We noticed the students are really enjoying that area.
They're not there yet. They left, and we did this in the 2 weeks after they were gone and before July 1st. So, but walking the school before, and for the past several years, anytime you walk in the hallways, you'd see groups of students with their Chromebook sitting on the floor here and sitting on the floor there. they're definitely out in the hallways doing work. So we're just giving them an area to plug in and stand up and have a little bit more flexibility to do their work. Work orders completed period of June 3rd through July 7th. We completed 118, up from 95 the previous period. Created 81 work orders, exactly the same as the previous period of 81 work orders. I think it's the first time I've seen that. Close ratio of 1.46 to 1, which is way up from 1.17 to 1, and just really a function of fewer work orders coming in. And now open 96 work orders out of, from 128 that were open before. So we're in good shape on work orders. That's all I have for facilities update.
Thank you, Mr. Tony. Does anyone have any questions? Sandy?
Yeah, thank you. I saw an ad or a bid request for a Promethean activity.
I think that's on the
What
agenda
are
for the
those?
finance committee meeting. Those are some touchscreen boards that it's actually on the agenda for the next meeting. They'll be talking about those.
Okay.
While you're
I
looking,
had one other one, but I'm all set, so.
do you have one?
No, I had another one, but I forgot what it is now.
I just have one quick one. The Nancy Loud project, is there any chance we're going to find any environmental or asbestos or any issues?
The school was tested as part of the AHRA filing that we have, and we already went through the school, and the only known hazards were in floors that were mitigated. So from all of the records we have and all the testing we've already done, no.
Okay,
The other piece that is a good sign, I guess, is the extreme age of that sin, that's horsehair plaster. And when they were putting horsehair in, they were putting animal products in because they weren't putting asbestos in. The horsehair and the asbestos serve the same function.
okay. Good, thank you. Anyone else?
I do.
Go ahead, Karen.
So you put 2 of these in, correct? Do we have any plans on putting them in more in this school or more in any of the other schools? Or was that just like a test?
This is a test to see how people respond to it, and if we like it, and if we do, we would have to look to find more money. There's certainly, I think, in the high school opportunity. There's lots of unused lockers. I think there's more demand in the high school. I'm not sure about the lower grades, if they have the kids out in the hallways as much as they do at the high school.
Okay.
So stay tuned, I guess, is my answer. for that.
Perfect, thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Yes, absolutely.
Next item is Spalding High School Library Furniture Bid.
In your package, you'll see some bid results, and this bid was largely put together by Justin Roy and Billy Joy, the librarian. I'm just kind of helping them shepherd it through the process. And we received a bunch of bids, and we're recommending school furnishings by Hertz for $37,333.10 that Mr. Roy will be funding out of his operating budget.
So do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept.
I think there's a question.
The question will come after the motion and the second. Go ahead.
Motion to accept the school furnishing Hertz furniture bid for Spalding High School furniture of $37,330.10.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Questions? Shane?
How, because you're doing this for a long time, how do one come with like a 73,000 and a 39? How is that
That's a great
possible?
question. There's a lot of room in the furniture bid, and like, this was written by the librarian and the principal, and they did the best they could in writing the spec. So there could have been some unclarities in the spec, but every single one of the bidders has an opportunity to call and speak with them and go through and find out exactly what their needs were. The lowest bid, the person forgot to include stuff. So they couldn't meet the spec, they didn't have everything in there. The second lowest bid, the one I'm recommending, Hertz, he also forgot to include some stuff. And when I was qualifying the bid, I went through the list with him, I said, oh, wait a minute, you don't have this, you don't have these booths right here. Can you honor this price and give us everything that you were supposed to include? So he went back to his management, and they decided that they want to honor the price because they really want to become our partner and they want to work with us in the future because they figure we're going to buy a lot of furniture. So I really think that we're getting a great deal. Furniture's made in America and it has a 15-year warranty, and we know that he's giving us a few pieces for free.
Sarah?
that took care of it.
You got it?
Yeah.
Dave?
So, Mr. Toddy, just for clarification, you see all, so Mr. Roy and the librarian wrote the specs or whatever, you review those specs as a facilities manager?
Not as a matter of course, because it wasn't a business administrator to review it at the time, I stepped in and worked with them on that.
Okay, I know we've had other issues in the past where things have been bought by faculty or whatnot.
Sure.
You know, I want to make sure
This
you
one-
stay in the loop of things
This
that
one
come
I
into the school.
had totally in the loop, absolutely.
Okay.
Anybody else?
No surprise in national line.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Next item.
Bath improvements bid, in your package, you'll see some bid results. This is a floor at the Spalding High School in the ladies' room. You could see the original 1939 tile failing. Also, if you look closely, you could see some patches that were put into that that are also failing. You'll remember this line, the money we're talking about is in the proposed or recently adopted, the fiscal '23 bonded. And the line was originally called Spalding High School Bath Improvements, and I asked you to rename it district-wide because my intent was, wanted to get these 4 bathrooms done, and with any surplus money, we could move on. So we advertised this bid, we had a mandatory bidders walkthrough. 2 bidders came to the walkthrough, and I told them all that we're looking to bid these 4 bathrooms, but we may be expanding the project to do some floors at William Allen School. So everybody knew that going into it, and we received 2 bids. Solid Roots Construction, who built our building outside, $112,000. Unified Builders, who's currently doing the abatement project at the Chamberlain kitchen floor, was $98,644. So I'm asking, so we bid out the 4 bathrooms at Spalding High School. I would like to expand this project to include William Allen if they can continue to do work at the same square foot price. So what I'd like to get is approval for Unified Builders Group for up to $200,000 from bonded CIP fiscal '23. We know they're the low bidder, we've established a square foot price that they're the low bidder with. And if we can keep using those numbers to roll William Allen into it. The reason we did it this way is because the market is so volatile for construction costs. If I had bid this out for both schools and it came in at $200,001, we would be rejecting all bids and we'd be putting this work off to next year. So I staged it this way in order to ensure that at least we're going to get the Spalding High School done, and hopefully we'll be able to get William Allen done as well. So there was a reason behind my madness.
So I guess I'll make a motion to accept the bid from
Unified Builders Group.
Builders Group, up to $200,000 bonded by CIP fiscal year '23 budget, and for the bathrooms,
Do you have a second?
For district-wide bathroom.
District what?
Thank you. Questions? Karen?
If you looked at the square footage of William Allen, do you know what the price will be? It will be on that hairy edge of 200,000 or,
It will be less.
okay.
I mean, it's, yeah, and we're gonna start with just two worst building, 2 bathrooms there. But my intent is to get as far as I can this summer with that 200,000.
So can I just ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
So if you have extra money and there's another bathroom that you think is in need of repair, do you have to come to us and ask for that, or can
Well,
you
that's
just
why I'm
use-
asking, it this
So-
way.
Right, so I just wanted to get clarification. So if it's the same square footage and then there's a bathroom at a different school that needs it, you could also have them do that one at the same time?
I could,
Okay,
but there are additional bathrooms at William Allen that I doubt will get out of that school 100%.
okay.
But yes, the ask is for Unified Builders for district-wide bathrooms
Yeah.
up to 200,000. So yeah, I could
Okay, thank you.
conceivably go to another school.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Next item. Rochester Middle School roof coating bid.
Roof coating bid, and you'll see 4 bids here in front of you, and I'm recommending that we reject all the bids.
Why?
Right, well, so we bid out roof coating because in working with the manufacturer's rep for Carlisle roofs, most all of our EPDM rubber roofs in the district are Carlisle roofs. And they said, these roof coatings, you can put them on at half the cost of a new roof and you get yourself a 15-year warranty. Well, that sounds like a great deal. So we put out a bid for a roof coating. And we put out a very specific polyurethane product. The low bidder bid a silicone product, doesn't meet spec. The next low bidder, $74,000, he bid a new roof with a 20-year warranty. That's a superior product, but he didn't meet the spec. He didn't do what we asked him to do. It's a killer deal, but it's not really fair to the other guys, because Academy did what we asked them to do. And we asked them to do something very specific with the belief that it was going to be less expensive, but you heard me mention volatility of this market. The construction industry is on its head. These numbers don't make sense. Really, ethically, the lowest qualified bidder is Academy Roofing for $88,370. But I can't sit here and tell you, let's spend $88,000 when I know a new roof costs $74,000. I wouldn't be doing my job if I did that. So the roof's not leaking now. We can put it out. We can let this wait. If we have to do a repair, if we start to get a leak, we can do a repair. If we put it back out to bid, we're not going to get it done before the kids return. So we'll be punting this one to next summer. But I think that that's the ethical thing to do.
So you're gonna bring that back to us? Or do we? You want
Reject
to
everything.
Reject everything
And
now?
we'll put out a new bid next spring, and we'll revisit this next summer.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to reject all bids pertaining to the Boston Middle School ceiling roof coatings.
We have a second?
Yes.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Next item. The steeplejack services.
So we advertised the bid for hourly rate for steeplejack services. The only place we use the steeplejack services is at the Spalding High School. The last 2 or 3 cycles of tower work were all done by Limerick Steeplejacks. They were the low bidder on a defined scope of work. Any time that you hire a contractor, you're to some greater or lesser extent entering a trust relationship. That trust relationship is accentuated when the work the contractor is doing is 90 feet in the air. He's the only one that can see it, right? If he's the only guy going up there, you're gonna trust him when he did it right. So if that's the case, it's in our best interest to have the same person going up there. I don't want to keep bringing a different guy and sending him up there, because if something fails, they're all going to point at each other. So I'm asking to approve Limerick Steeplejacks as our preferred steeplejack to do work at Spalding High School as needed at this hourly rate. We approved some other hourly rate contractors in the past, and the way we expressed it was the term would be for as long as Limerick Steeplejacks is willing to work at this rate. When he comes back to us and says, I need a 3% increase, that's time for us to go back out to bid.
I'll make a motion for accepting the $65 per hour per man from Limerick Steeplejacks for, as a retainer, hold on retainer, or?
Well, it's just an hourly rate, that's
Hourly
our
rate.
agreement, that they'll work for us at that rate.
Yeah.
A second? Thank you. Sandy was first. Sandy?
Yep. What, are they outside painters? Is that what they're gonna be doing? What are they gonna be doing?
So if they do a lot of different things, Steeplejack it's very similar to painting, but they also do carpentry, they do glazing, they do clockwork. One of the hands on the north-facing clock bezel fell off. Those are wooden hands.
Yep.
They're attached to a steel shaft by way of a bronze concoction that was a one-off made in 1939. You can't just order another one. So they actually get up there and look at it and fabricate something that will make that clock work. When the bezels were cracked, you send the glass faces were cracked, you send the steeplejack up to replace or repair that. When the fisheye window rotted out and fell in, the steeplejack would go take care of that. There are decorative urns all around that. They're metal. The posts that hold them in place rot out and the urns fall down. We've had that a few times. Steeplejack goes up and repairs that system. So it's a little bit more than painting. It's
Okay.
anything that's up there. So it's painting, light carpentry, metalwork, roofing, and any other clock.
When is the last time they worked on that?
Last year.
Last year?
Oh yeah, we're
So is this a thing that happens every year, you mean? There's something that goes wrong, or something fails, or something?
Well,
that's-
what we've been doing is we've been trying to get them up to a really good state. And once we get them there, then it would probably be every 2 years, we'd want to get somebody to.
Because I thought we did that about 3 years ago,
We-
and the
we
clocks were working and everything was great. And
We,
then,
we did the 2 small towers. Well, first we did all the gold tops, all 3 of them. Then we did a rehab on the 2 small towers, and then we did a rehab on the lower portion of the big tower. So what remains this year is the upper portion of the big tower, from the first urns up to the gold dome.
okay.
And if you drive by and look at it, you can see the difference in paint. You can see there's some work there that needs to be done. And
We used a weird color paint last time. It was a gold, but it was a variety of gold that was not,
oh, on the domes,
yeah.
it's not paint, that's an epoxy rubber.
Whatever it was pretty weird.
It's, yeah, but it's gonna last longer than I'm gonna live. Which is good.
I want you to sign my paper right here that says that. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other
Yeah.
questions? Dave?
So, Mr. Todd,
Sure.
$65 per hour is for the steeplejack, for the person literally going up the rope
Yes.
or staging. Do we support their activities as far as our staff supporting, obviously there's more than one person, so,
They have a crew, they'll send, if they need to send 2 or 3 men, they will. So they get up there and,
okay, well, I guess what I'm getting at is still for their ground crew, whatever, we're paying whoever they send for a crew, $65 an hour rate
For me.
per
per
person.
person.
And their equipment and all that other stuff is additional? Or,
If they had to run a lift, I suspect they would charge us for that. They have never done that. They go with ropes and ladders. These are old-fashioned
okay.
steeplejacks.
Alright.
And materials, they would bill us for materials as used, and, we keep an eye on that. Make sure there's no,
All in favor? Any opposed? Exterior insulation finishing system, here's bid.
okay, so. EFIS, exterior insulation finishing system. You've probably driven by construction sites where you see they put this like yellow foam board on the outside of the building and then they skim coat it with some stucco looking stuff, and every building that's been built, every strip mall in the world is made out of this stuff. That's EFIS. There are parts of this building, high school, that have EFIS around the cafeteria, library, and art room windows and doors. That whole addition has exterior EFIS that's in a state of failure. So Streamline Waterproofing was a low bidder last December 21 when we did the caulking project. And while they were doing that work, we identified, okay, the EFIS needs to get done. This is a different scope of work than the caulking project. At that time, they gave us a price of $16,200 to do the additional work. We didn't have it in budget, and it's a large enough dollar amount that it warrants needing to go out to bid. So we said, well, hold off, we're gonna put this out to bid. So we advertised the bid. Only one contractor showed up. So that means only one contractor was able to bid on the work, and that was Streamline Waterproofing. Streamline Waterproofing mailed their bid on Thursday. It did not arrive. So our bid opening came and went. So technically, there were no bids received on this project. So if there were multiple people at the walkthrough, if there was competition, if there were 2 contractors interested in this, I would be saying reject, we're gonna go back and rebid. But only one person came to the walkthrough. This guy came to the walkthrough, he knew he was the only one there. So he knew that he could have taken his 16 and make it 20. And he knew he was the only one and he was gonna be the low bid. He didn't. The bid that he put in, that we haven't received, he sent me a copy of it, and he's honoring the $16,000 that he quoted back in February. So given that there were no other bidders at the walkthrough, I don't think it's unethical for us to approve. He didn't meet the bid opening. He screwed up. But he's honoring a price that we knew. He's the only guy eligible to bid. I don't think it's, I guess I'm asking you, if you all think it's ethical, then vote to support that we give this work $16,200. We'll pay for it from a bonded district-wide exterior surface line, fiscal '23, and we'd award that work to Streamline Waterproofing. If you think the bidding irregularities are unethical in some way, then I think you should make a motion to vote to reject.
I think with the way prices, just speaking as one number, the way prices have increased, if he's honoring prices from early this year, that's probably a good thing. So I'd be in favor of a motion.
I'll make a
Someone-
motion to accept, approve Streamline Waterproofing in the amount of $16,200 for waterproofing.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thank you. Now, CTE controls work.
So, to clarify, CTI is Controls Technologies Incorporated, CTE is the Credo Technology Building, should actually say CTC, I apologize. As you know, we didn't do a complete rebuild of the Credo Center when we did the rebuild. We kept parts, old parts, and we have new parts. And we have, many of the labs in there have air source heat pumps, which is the system you see on the left, provide the first stage of heat. And those work great down to about 40 degrees outside air temperature. You get much below that, which it often does in New Hampshire, and you need to go to a second stage of fossil fuel heat. That's the heating system you see pictured on the right. In these labs, I have both of those heating systems, and that's right and correct. We should have both of them. That's how you do it in New England. But the controls between the two were never fully integrated. This is the last little piece of, when we made the decision to renovate only part of the tech center, this is the last piece that brings all the tech center and unifies it and ties it all together. This didn't go out to bid because Control Technologies is the low bidder on the air quality improvement project, and they are building out the new control system across the district. So we naturally want their controls to get installed. There, I would note that we chose them because their controls, unlike previous Honeywell controls, are open protocol. If we continue our relationship with CTI, it will be because we think they're the best people at the best price to do the work, not because they're the only people that can do the work. So, all that said, I'm asking for you to approve $26,900 spending from cash CIP line 20102 and 20103, which are HVAC upgrade lines, existing money that we'll spend the first one down and tap into the second one to complete this project and finally unify the controls in that building.
Cash CIP or bond?
Those are cash lines. Oh, I'm sorry.
It says bonded, that's what I'm asking.
It says bonded. How about if we just say CIP 20102 and 20103, because that's identifier enough to single out a line, and if I made a typo.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve $26,900 for CTI to complete control at CTC building from CIP lines 20102 and 20103.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Sorry, skipped a line. Opening plan.
We received a letter from Eversource that I just share with you a quote. They say in their letter, they say, and I quote, "On August 1st, customers will see unprecedented rate increases in the supply portion of their bill, which will be more than double last August's supply rate." Electricity is getting more expensive, and it's about to take a big jump. We are still running 24/7 ventilation, because I was directed to run 24/7 ventilation by this board. I'm not going to turn that off until this board tells me to. I'm wondering if if you would like to tell me to do that now. Also, if we're gonna, as we move into bringing students back in September, if I'm going to do anything other than leave everything exactly like it is, I need to start working on that now. So I need to have a discussion about 24/7 ventilation in September. If you can kind of point me in a direction on that piece of opening and let me know what we think about ventilation for the summer months, that would be most appreciated.
Steve?
So, Kyle, this is kind of a budget question. I mean, that's gonna hit us hard, obviously, in the budget.
Yeah, every department, I mean, you heard the city council talking about how they hadn't locked in an oil price, right? So they were gonna be budgeting, they budgeted one number and then the oil price is very different. So we're actually currently working with a consortium we've been part of the last few years for natural gas and electricity. And there are buying groups, so these buying groups get a rate set based on volume. Obviously, schools use a lot of volume. So the districts, we're currently working on that. Hopefully we'll have something in the future to share.
So as a follow-up to that, I guess, are we locked into PSNH or Eversource, excuse me, as far, as far as those rate hikes, or are we?
Not
If we
necessarily.
go on the market.
We're locked in Eversource for the distribution portion of the bill. The production portion of the bill comes through the consortium.
Right.
I share the Eversource information because if everyone's going up.
Right, and I did similar, I no longer with Eversource, I'm locked into a different rate as of next month, so I just want to make sure that, is
We're looking at it. I guess, Mr. Toddy's question to you as the board is, and again, I think if you were to ask him, I think summer months right now, we probably could not have them running 24/7.
Right.
And save a little bit. I'm going to be giving you a draft of the opening plan that we're required to have again next year. And I'll give that to you next month. Currently, it has that I think we should run them when students are in the building, students and staff, 24/7. But at least now you can make a recommendation in a few months, save all that money that we'll probably have to spend down the road.
Okay, I think that makes sense.
Well, we have students in the building right now, in portions of the building, or?
Well, remember, we always ran it when the buildings were occupied, but currently our plan that you approved last year was 24/7.
Right.
So nights, weekends, like holidays, we're running it consistently. And Mr. Toddy mentioned, if you think about it, we used to run it for 8 hours, now we're running 24. So in 1 year, we ran it for 3 years worth of time, right?
So just shut.
So we'll still run all of the controls when we have students in the building. I think that makes perfect sense. Do we want to make a motion to that?
Make a motion to, I guess, at their discretion in regards to when to shut them off, when students are in or is operating, we run it, shut it off at your discretion, yes.
You can make your motion to ventilate during occupied hours
Yeah,
and
Exactly.
shut off during unoccupied hours
for summer months.
for summer months. And,
So we'll.
Do you have a second?
That's it.
Thank you. Any discussion? Go ahead.
They turn down the heat in some of the rooms in Spalding anyway, don't they? Because it was really cold in that library when I was up over
Oh,
there.
for the scholarship committees? Yeah, we run into ventilation, yeah.
So you turn the heat down to stay in my room.
Well, the heat was off, I mean, in the spring, the heat's off, yeah, yeah.
I know, bring a sweater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so nice.
Any other questions? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The CIP budget.
so you'll have a handout for you. And just want to review what I heard, I think, in some city council meetings, and what's in the minutes of those meetings, and how we came and how I'm approaching this conversation. Yes, sir. Okay, so on May 17th, Committee of the Whole Budget Workshop,
Are you talking the school?
I'm talking about the City Council, when they were reviewing the CIP, making recommendations to make bottom line cuts.
That's all they can make is a recommendation to the bottom. They can't make any line
Right.
recommendations.
Right. So that's part of what I want to
Okay,
go, so the first, chronologically, the first thing happens is council vote and moves to exclude $85,000 for an articulated boom lift. After discussion, the motion carries. And Councilor Malone opens a discussion about district paving, sealing, crack filling for $300,000. And she's talking about Maple Street Magnet School. What they get to in the discussion is that there's another project for bonded Maple Street Magnet School site work improvements. And I think that's what the one she was trying to talk about. I don't know. That's my assumption based on what I see, because when that clarification was made, Councilor Moon withdrew her motion. Right after that, Finance Director Ambrose talks about that bottom line thing that you just talked about.
right.
So with regard to the $85,000 motion, the motion was voted on to not approve the boom lift. But after clarification, what it was is they made a motion to reduce $85,000 from the bottom line. Remember, the discussion was around $200,000 worth of bonded paving at Maple Street Magnet School. On June 7th, Mayor Callahan moves to decrease the school department's cash CIP by $200,000. Not bonded. The money for Maple Street's still there. It's in the bonding. But the conversation was about Councilor Malone cautioned that we shouldn't spend money in a school that we're going to be closing. It's the first time anyone told me we're closing Maple Street. I haven't heard that before, so I just want to, that was a discussion. I'm part of the building committee. I haven't had that discussion yet, so I just want to make sure that I say that. That's the first time someone's talked about closing Maple Street to me. If that's what we want to do, that's great and fine, but that's, because of all that discussion, it feels like the $200,000 was probably looking at not doing paving at Maple Street. But if you look at what I just handed out, the top section is bonded dollars. The bottom section is cash. The motion was to cut cash, not to cut bonded. So all the Maple Street projects are intact. And out of that cash CIP, we need to find a 45% reduction in what we asked for in cash CIP, 45% of it.
So where was the boom originally?
It's in the last line in cash.
Oh, so we only, yeah, we would need, if we did decide to take out the boom, then we would need to cut 115.
No.
No.
So I know it was a little confusing. There was two meetings where different motions at the council, because remember they had like public hearings and the budget meetings at city council. And so the first motion was to cut $85,000 from cash. Forget about them saying boo, Councilor Ambrose corrected them, so, but the motion still passed, so $85,000. So you could carve out any $85,000 you
That we
want.
want to, right?
But the next motion that was made and approved by city council was to cut an additional $200,000, so a total of $285,000 from cash capital improvements. So right now, basically what Mr. Toddy's asking you to do is say, how would you like us to cut $285,000 from this list, which is 45% of these cash projects? So we can then set these in munis in our budget.
So your second page, I've offered one possible So plumbing, HVAC, and electrical upgrades with $25,000 each, they would both go to zero. There is bonded lines that, bless you, there's bonded lines with HVAC money and electrical money. The bonded lines are usually for long-term projects. That's why you bond it, you're gonna pay for it over 20 years. Cash CIP is really to get me out of a jam. It's a problem I don't know about yet. If something breaks, I gotta fix it because I got a bus coming down the street. Gotta take care of this. Where's the money? Oh, here it is. Well, I could go after bonded for those kinds of things for this next year if I zero both those lines. Playground upgrades, I've talked to you before about the cost of playground stuff. That line's already been cut. 10,000 is gonna buy maybe one structure. It's not gonna make a huge difference. And that's not something that's broken right now. I don't have a broken piece of equipment that I'm looking at replacing. Fire suppression is the same thing. It's 10,000. That's for some pipes or a compressor that starts leaking. I have plumbing and HVAC and mechanical lines in bonded that I could go after for small repairs if that were needed. The district-wide paving, the reason I left 280,000 in there is the paving at the high school. And if you approve this, we'll talk about the paving at the high school. But essentially what I want to achieve is the walkway from the Spalding High School to this building is the emergency egress. There's no drainage. It melts and thaws, there's puddles, it turns into sheets of glare ice. Students are evacuated from that building, they have to walk across a literal skating rink. Students have fallen, students have been injured, there have been accidents out here because of this ice. It's a problem, I know I have it now, I would like to fix it. As opposed to some of these other lines are problems I don't know I have yet, or problems I don't have yet. This paving and drainage is one I have now. So that's why I left that there. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in the next slide if you approve this, or before you approve it, if you want me to dig into that a little bit more, I'm happy to. The vehicle replacement and upgrade, this board authorized purchasing the vehicle out of end-of-year funds, and we were able to do that. So we can cut 56,000 right there without having to worry about it. I left 9,000 in it because that vehicle still needs a plow and a light, so it can become a plow truck. So we wanted to keep 9,000 there. Painting cycle, interior, we've got a lot of interior painting, and I'm cutting 14,000 there, but I would like to also ask if we did that, in cash CIP 22107 is exterior painting, and that line has about $16,000 in it. I would like to move 10,000 from cash 22107 exterior painting to cash 20112 interior painting, and that makes me whole for interior painting. So we can make those cuts and still get some painting projects that we want to get done. Food service equipment goes to zero. We've done a lot of replacements of equipment. It's the kind of thing, if most of our ovens, the only things that we're really going to see going wrong now are our steam tables and our cookers and our ovens are all in pretty good shape. The only thing we would see going wrong now is a reach-in cooler here or there. You may see 3,000 here, 3,000 there. But those are things we would have to find a way through. And we'd look to operating budget to achieve that. 5,000 in sod, we can cut that. I'm leaving the 20,000 in building security. We had talked about the SAFE grant, where I'm going to take 20 and make it into 100. This is the 20 of seed money for that. I don't want to see that go away because I lose the opportunity to go after the grant if we take that away. Flooring, 10,000 goes away, and articulated boom lift goes away. The sum of all those cuts is 285,000, and the cash CIP of 625,000 becomes 340,000. That's one way we can do it.
Personally, we submitted a budget that was under the tax cap. We met all of our obligation, and, it's very frustrating to me that, the city just, cut another $285,000 off our budget when we were already below the cut. Granted, with all of the way the numbers are figured out, we're doing okay last year, this year, but God knows what's gonna happen in 3 years. Anyway, I wish the public had been more in tune, because I know of a group of people that would have gone and advocated for us. But hindsight now. Pardon?
They need to run for office.
They do need to run for office. So, I mean, making the best of a bad situation, I think we have to go along with this plan. I don't know, what do you think? Lee?
First off, thank you for at least sitting down,
Right,
looking at
it's a
this.
lot of
and,
work.
You know, obviously, you're prioritizing, you know, the needs of the district, not that we don't, but, I mean, you as an employee, looking at, you know, where the needs are, definitely. And we sit down and say, here's your bucket, you know, it's not gonna overflow, so. I mean, if you're happy with these recommendations, I guess you're the guy calling the shots in regard to where the needs are more than, so you're in the district. You know? Happy, we sit over here and kind of manage it, but based on the input from the people out there doing it, you're the boots on the ground, so.
And we'll do what we have to do. We always have and we will.
I know.
So do we have a motion?
I have a question. My hand's up.
Oh, cute, okay.
So I wasn't at the conversation, so were they talking about the building itself? Because they can't tell us that we couldn't have a Magnet Street school at a different building. So were they talking specifically about the building? Because,
Let me read to you the minutes.
sorry,
That's quite
I just want to make sure I got
I
clear.
do too. That's
Yeah.
why I'm doing this. 'Cause
I mean, if it's the building, and the building only, what is it, 74 is the capacity, I know we're over that, but 74, if the discussion is the building, and we could have the Magnet Street, I'm just curious what was
Okay,
said.
so Councilor Mullen talks about the 300,000 paving crack ceiling. That's the 300,000 you see here that's getting cut down to 280. That's in cash. That money was never supposed to go to Maple Street. That was never intended. The Maple Street project is in bonded.
Okay.
So once they kind of hash through all that, Councilor Mullen withdraws her motion. So that tells me she was talking about Maple Street, not this other paving.
Correct. It sounds like it.
This is where Director Ambrose stands up and talks about, well, you can't pick and choose projects, it's bottom line cuts. And the end of that paragraph reads, Councilor Malone acknowledged the council's inability to adjust the school department's individual CIP requests, but she cautioned against funding projects at the Maple Street Magnet School where there is a potential of the school closing within the next several years and a new school being built. So they're saying, I don't know what they're saying.
So Kyle, I don't know which one of this goes to, but if, the building is owned by the city, correct, or not? So the building is owned, so can city council say, we don't want you using that building, or is that a joint building committee discussion, like?
So you control the actual schools, so, again, the only thing that you can't do is buy
They
land.
purchase and turn it over to the school department.
So we would have to turn it in to them.
Yes, and then you could sell it
And
if they wanted to.
has there been any discussion on the joint building committee?
There isn't one.
We don't have one? I thought we,
There's no land. It can't be a joint building committee. We started with a joint committee to start discussing land, and that wasn't discussed at that joint committee, and JBC doesn't form until there's land purchased, which we don't have.
okay.
Shane?
I don't think this board ever talked about closing that school. I think that was one of the better schools, better conditioned schools we have. Yeah, the capacity is not great, but it's in one of the better shapes.
Of the three small schools, it's the only one that's ADA compliant, because we put the money in to make it ADA compliant. We've got money in bonded here to work on parking and to work on floors, but I guess I'm looking for some direction. Should I be spending this money? Should I continue to improve these floors and this parking, or does somebody know something I don't?
No, I don't think anybody,
They've always discussed closing the three small schools for 40 years.
Yeah.
There's always been that somebody in the city boards, either council or schools, has talked about those three small schools. They get lumped together.
Shane?
That icy area, that property is owned by the city, correct? Right?
It's all maintained by us.
But maintained by us, but it's owned by the city?
Well, they own the land under the pavement, like any of the parking lots that we replace, it comes from our budget.
So there's nothing they would be willing to help when it comes to that?
It's-
Help us budget time.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, it's just a question, that's all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you're looking for direction, as far as I'm concerned, we have voted our budget, and if they make a cut, then, you know, we made a recommendation on how to deal with it.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, what we need to do is have you, right, make a motion to the full board that
Okay.
then allows us, right, the finance department, to actually enter this in the right way with the new allotments,
Sure.
so that Dave can draw off of them.
Dave?
I'll make a motion to amend the cash CIP to the alignment as proposed by Mr. Cuddy.
To cut it by
No,
285.
it's already been cut, right?
Right.
It's already been cut. This is a realignment of the
Okay.
assigned, of available money.
To approve Mr. Tidy's proposal to propose cash
Yeah.
CIP. That's
It's just realignment of the funds for the CIP. It's already been cut.
So a motion to realign the cash
To accept.
CIP, the approved
Yeah.
cash CIP
Yeah.
line.
Yep.
And do we have a second?
Second.
And discussion? Karen?
Do we know when the Magnet Street, when you're planning on doing that flooring?
Well, they have such a short window of closure there, it's gonna be difficult to do all of the floors at once. And we don't know what we're gonna get into when we start tearing the floors out. So my hope is to, a week from tomorrow, after this gets through full board, is to put a contractor into the worst classroom to start demoing one floor, to get underneath it, to see what's there, and to rebuild it. We'll get a better idea of the scope of work, and then we can look at moving to do the rest of the floors. So the demo, I don't know the full scope of what we're gonna get into until we get into it. Nobody knows what's under that floor, because it was built in 1911. The demo is about $5,000. I can assume that we're gonna spend probably another 5 to 10 putting it back together after the demo. So I'd be looking to spend about 15,000 of that 100,000 right this summer to get the worst room taken care of and to learn a lot about what's under there and what the project will look like in the future.
And putting it off you would not recommend putting it off? I mean, we're
So-
talking about building a new school, and
Yeah.
if we could, you know what I mean, if city council is saying that building is small, it would behoove us to look at it and say, maybe we move the Magnet Street School to a bigger school, or if there's no way that you, like, what is your recommendation?
It becomes a question of, we can defer anything, right? But
Yeah.
let me qualify that and what that means. Whenever you defer something, you take a risk. And the risk is, I have an uneven floor, number 4 that I can't keep clean. So if there's a trip and fall as a result of that floor, one trip and fall can cost more than that project, easily,
Correct.
in litigation. So it's difficult, I can't, I won't tell you, oh, no one's gonna fall on that, because they might. The reason I put it in the budget is because I see an exposure.
Right.
I see exposure with that floor.
I think another important piece of information to share, as people have mentioned, like there was no conversation at any point in time with our board about closing Maple Street Magnet School. And our building aid proposal, which was basically seen by the joint committee that sat here in February and March, does not include the capacity to assume another school building of students. So at any time, another one of our buildings could close, but we don't have space for them where we would need to be responsible for educating them. So our building aid proposal or application was due July 1. It went in with what we had proposed and shared with the joint council, and we can't amend that. If the city did decide to do something radical, they would be on the hook for the dollar amount to do that.
Can you just say that one more, I just want to make sure, so we applied July 1st.
Yep.
So if the city were to say, the joint building committee, not the city, but if the joint building committee were to say, we want it to be big enough so that we could take the Magnet Street School students and absorb them and make another building, I'm not saying eliminate the Magnet Street School, you're saying at this point, we couldn't do that even if we wanted to?
It's not in the application.
Okay.
Well, to clarify, could, but it'd be 100% taxpayer money.
Right.
I'm sorry, say that again?
We could, but it'd be 100% taxpayer money.
Would be
And we've been
qualified for
saying
the
we
aid.
don't want the aid, we want to take all the taxpayers' money to this, which I don't think anyone would want to do that. But
When, do you know, when do we have to get when is the land according to our timeline? According to our timeline?
Well past the timeline already.
It was
Yeah.
March.
So has a piece of land been chosen, or
The city
90%
council,
chosen?
they identified a few properties, Mr. Toddy mentioned earlier in his building report that he's walked some rounds
But
with.
they haven't narrowed that down.
They have not.
They have not.
Okay.
So let's have the vote, the motion's been made and seconded to reallocate the cash CIP as suggested by Mr. Toddy. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes, thank you. And lost my agenda, so do you have a written? Yeah. Sometimes they come in handy. 5-year plan, I don't think we have anything for tonight.
Well, I'd just like to make
Oh,
a comment. I think Mr. Busey shared out the 5-year committee,
This is the 5 year.
some preliminary numbers from, so as part of the air quality improvement project, we brought in energy efficiency industries working in partnership with Banwell Architects, and they're really looking at the control system. This is the grant-funded project. But as part of having them in our district, they took a holistic look at all of our buildings, kind of from the, I'm thinking of it as like a State of the Union kind of a thing. Let's take a 60,000-foot view of all of our facilities and kind of look at what needs to be done where. So we've shared some of that information out already, and I was thinking about presenting it tonight, but it's already been a long night, so I didn't prepare it for tonight, and I just wanted to put it on your radar that next month I will put forward some State of the Union kind of things on our facilities, and I can, if I'm in town, we don't have a 5-year committee in July. I think the next 5-year is at the end of August. So I think the maybe, I don't know where this information should go to 5-year or building, but building is coming up within a month and 5 years not, so I want to bring it to building.
it becomes a building, the building brings it to 5-year for
Okay.
adjustment on your priorities.
All right, so.
So I'll
can we have
start
it
here next month. Yeah.
Yeah,
Great.
maybe plan for a nice, longer time.
Bring snacks, is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Bring snacks, yeah.
I'll show up.
bring cookies.
brownies.
Perfect.
5 seconds.
Public comment,
They left 2 hours ago.
what was that?
They left 2 hours ago.
Yeah. Other? Shane?
So I got some questions about the new building. I emailed Kyle, told him I was gonna have a few questions. First, what's in the application you're saying for the new building, for that? What's the application consist of?
Well, the full application's in the building folder, so it is basically, you have to do a lot of things. Everything from fire inspections to land acquisition to estimated valuation of all district properties. And then you have to propose your scope. So we did this without land, but we used information that we shared with the joint committee in February and March to look to consolidate 2 small schools and get rid of the modulars, because as Audrey said, those topics have been around for a long time. So the proposed school that we have is a 350 student school, which would allow us to close potentially School Street Nancy Loud, remove the modulars in Chamberlain and William Allen, and we would have have to, depending on where that site is, we may need to redraw a couple lines here or there, like we did with Chamberlain a few years ago when it was overcrowded, and we had room on the east side at East Rochester and Nancy Lab. So the application, 20-something documents, separate documents, everything from scope of the project, footprint, proposed cost, square footage, the architects helped us, and like I said, the full application, you'll see in the documents that I shared in the folder. The first one is basically the application they give us to fill out, it's template-based, and then every item, it says like LO1 was a specific requirement, so the attachment that LO1, you'll see in the application, that's the attachment to justify LO1, and then LO2 is what they ask. So if you start with the first document and then they're all numbered, LO1, LO2, LO3, I think all the way to L19 maybe, they're all in there. So it's quite a comprehensive list of documents.
Something else, Shane?
Yeah, I got quite a few.
Well, what are the, can I ask what the scope of your questions are?
It's-
Are there
it's just-
things that aren't gonna be answered by reviewing the file?
No, it's questions for the board, that's why I'm talking about it here today.
But are the questions answered in the file?
No.
Okay.
At the joint building committee, what size school have you guys talked about?
Well,
So it's 350.
Okay,
Yep.
so my concern is Rochester's population is growing fast. We're becoming bigger and bigger. If we just build a school the size of, let's say, McClellan, are we gonna be gaining? Yeah, we'll get rid of the modulars, but are we, or should we be thinking a big school to prepare ourselves for this population, the population that continues to grow? That's just my concern, that
And to be honest with you, it's one of my concerns, it's something I brought up when I had a meeting with the city manager and the mayor. That's more of a strategic plan on the city side. So, you know, recently there was an article in the paper that says over near the Anchorage and Brock Street, there's gonna be like 270 units going in, 3-bedroom townhouses. I had a meeting with the planning board, and the planning board assured me the builders told them it wouldn't impact the school. And I said, did the counselors believe them? And they said, yes. And I said, are they planning to sell to sterile people? Because when you have 3 bedrooms, you'll have at least one child at some point. And then I said to the planning board, or the planning department, I said, right now, where that location is, Gonick is full and McClellan is full. I said, I don't have any room at the inn. And our buses run east to west. Transportation is very costly. So we've entered into conversations with the planning department, so when they're bringing in on new developments, we're hopefully getting to the table. We've already had one meeting to talk about some things to help, but currently, right now, again, something that went in the other day, I think they allowed in the tip zone up at the Ridge, those are gonna be studios. So the argument is, if you're in a studio apartment, you probably don't have a child. Probably, right, but not necessarily. So again, I just look at it as, anytime somebody flushes a toilet in our town, we get affected, because bodies have resources they need, and schools are one of those resources that you need. So we hope to entertain multiple conversations with the city over time, because, you know, one of the things I said to the mayor was, it sounds like there should be a strategic planning committee. If we want to consolidate schools, perhaps there could be a north elementary school, a south elementary school, an east elementary school, and a west elementary school. But that's not something I can do because I can't purchase land. So that's more of a citywide discussion that would have to happen, and we're happy to have those conversations. All I know is we have a certain number of kids in our school district right now, and we need space to put them. So closing 3 schools doesn't work for us because we only built a building 8 application that accommodates 2 schools in the modulars, which was all the discussions we had with our joint committees. So, you know, again, I think your point's well served. I think at some point there should be strategic conversations about what are we doing when the increase in our population occurs to serve the future population of our city.
it's not just those townhouses over there, we have brand new high-end townhouses going right over by Lafayette Street as well, and those are almost done. And those are the high-end ones, so more students are coming. That school at St. Elizabeth, that closed, so I'm just concerned that if this, I'm hoping the city will entertain a bigger school, because no matter what, we gotta take these kids, we gotta figure it out. And I'm just worried that kids are gonna lose out on their education because classrooms are gonna be so full, because we're not gonna have a choice but to take these kids in. So that's just my concern. I just wanna make sure that at least we're trying to, we don't rush this just to get a new school, to get rid of the modulars. Take our time and make sure we do,
We've been taking time.
25 years to get rid of them.
but I'm just saying, we don't wanna just rush this and just get this one school when we're gonna be in the same predicament we're in.
Do you have another question? Shane?
No.
No more?
And I think his point's well made. I
Yeah.
think something that Matt mentioned earlier is, you know, Shane, they could entertain like doubling the size of the school. The problem is, as Matt said, our application is for a certain number. So if the city were to want to do something larger, that means that they have to foot the bill, right? So earlier on, when we accepted CTE money, right, it was, I think, Mr. Toddy, 16.4 million was the initial. That had to change because there was disagreement on the city side at the time to approve that dollar amount, and then things changed. And we had to reduce the scope because we were in line for CTE dollars and we weren't in line when we could have got all of it. So again, it can be done. It's just the current proposal that we have is essentially building a school for zero impact on the tax base. That's what we propose in the city.
Sandy?
Yeah, I'm just curious, have we tried to analyze either the bus pickups or any other system we might use on all the complexes that are completed? For instance, on Old Dover Road, the Athenian something or other, and we've got the one on Washington Street, and we.
So our bus company, part of the contract is every summer they have to redo the routes and analyze routes. Some of the complaints we get for folks from that development up there on Old Dover Road is that we don't go into the development. We don't go into any developments.
Right.
But if you notice on Old Dover Road, which is a highly traveled road, there's no bus pullover, right? So when, I said to the planning department, I said, we need a safe place for our kids to stand. We need a safe place for the buses to pull over and be out of traffic so that no one's in harm's way. And we're not holding up traffic of commuters. And so, these are all things that when we're not at the table, they don't get put into the building specs.
See, years ago, every plan that came into the planning board actually had a school board approval, a fire department approval, police department approval. They all signed off on every plan in the old days. Apparently that doesn't happen anymore.
Doesn't happen, but we've been asking to get to the table, and they've told us they want us there, so we're hopeful that we'll see us being invited more before development were to be approved, so we could at least say, it would make sense for a bus pullover to be right here, because we would be talking with our bus company to make sure it's safe, and then they could build it,
Right. I mean, if they understood the situation, they could require the development to make a pull-off station and all of that. That's not the city's responsibility or the school department's responsibility. It's the planning department, it's the developers.
And they were very good to work with recently, and like I said, we provided them a lot of information. They're hopefully gonna continue to invite us to the table so we can talk.
No,
How many
problem, it's a
three-bedroom-
brand
how
new
many three-bedroom
planning
units
board, they
did you
don't
say?
know much.
There's 2 different projects, and I think it was over 200
Three-bedroom,
three-bedroom townhouses.
We're in trouble.
do you know 200 families that want three bedrooms, that don't have kids?
I can't figure out where all they're coming from. I don't get it.
Moving north.
It is moving north.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Guess that opens up the turnpike.
Everyone moves here because of housing. You talk to them, everyone moves to Rochester because housing's cheap.
And our schools are best.
We're looking, the Brock Street, that housing, that 200 families, we're looking to put schools on the other side of town. Our school application is for,
Right.
not for those kids.
Well, remember, those lots were on the GIS maps that I showed like the last 2 years, right? They're just coming to fruition now, because remember when we were looking at them, there was a purple dot and there was a green dot, right?
Yep.
And it was proposed and accepted. So those have moved from one color to another now, and they're being built, right? So we kind of said, and initially, we're looking at land on the east side because it was more move-in ready, more of those dots were green at the time, and so that's what we were doing.
Busing across town.
Great. Anything else on the other?
Me again. So 2 questions. So you mentioned that we filled out the application. And I'm just looking for clarification. So if we wanted to build it bigger, we would lose all of the money or only the portion that we want to build bigger?
Make a new application.
I don't think we can put a new application in.
We cannot,
Why can't we make a new application for an extra 100 kids?
because it was due on the July
July
1st.
Deadline's passed.
So
We're
would
not gonna
we,
build this building next year or even,
If we're gonna use the money we have planned to do it, we have to do it very quickly.
we're
So-
not gonna use that money this year, this 2023.
No, it would be expended before December 2024.
so we would, I don't know if I got an answer. So would we get the money for building whatever, the 354, and then if we wanted to increase it to 100, would we still get that funding and we would have to pay the extra? Or would we lose it altogether?
There was, when Amy Clark came to building in November of last year, there were certain things that disqualified us.
Yep.
Like if we started building before we had approval, right, that would disqualify us. So I'm not sure of all the disqualifications, but we can ask and get back to you, but.
That was, yeah. And then my second question is, so we're behind our timeline because we haven't gotten the land yet. So is it every 2 years that we can apply for this kind of aid? Or is it, so where we applied this July, so we didn't get it this July in 2022, we could apply in 2024 if we really wanted to.
You could apply, yeah, anytime it's open.
That's if the building aid is available.
Correct, but
And
did
our
they
current
say when
buildings
they,
Can stand.
well, I'm just looking at what our options are if it doesn't, because it sounds like we're kind of behind the 8 ball. And then,
Clarify.
Right now.
We aren't.
We aren't.
No, we aren't.
Let's
well, we're a
clarify.
team.
The city, yeah.
And then, I know that when we had our joint building committee, there was people, when are we having community, and do we have to wait till we get the land and all that stuff, and then we can involve the community?
Yeah, so there was a big timeline, it's included in the building, November, if you look at the November building aid folder, there's a timeline. So site acquisition is really the first thing that happens, and then it was community engagement. And then there's an 18-month construction window. That 18-month construction window can't really be shrunk in any way. So what ends up getting compressed is the community involvement, which is a really sad thing. So we haven't involved the community yet because we don't have land, so we can't really involve the community in something we don't have yet. But we will hopefully do something like that if we get land.
I think it's just kind of, it's hard because if we're already bound by what we applied for, and then we get community members that come in and say, I like it bigger, I like it smaller, I like it, you know what I mean? We're not, we say we're gonna have community involvement, but yet there are certain things that they can't, it's disheartening that we're so behind.
I would agree with you on that.
Yes.
Basically, all this project does is take care of our needs for those 2 buildings and our modulars. The future's gonna have to be another project.
Anything else on the other? Who's that?
Sorry.
Public input.
Go ahead.
So there's a drawing here of the glare ice that I had talked about. This one behind you, if it's easier to see, but the oval that you can start to see here is the football field. All right, this is the track that runs along here. This is the bleachers. This is the community center where we are, this is the high school. So all of this in here is the pavement that becomes glare ice. Here is the restrooms, the concession stand, and the ticket booth. So we're gonna pave from the bottom of this slope to the gate. We're gonna install a catch basin here, a catch basin here, and a catch basin here. We're gonna pump all of that, or gravity feed all of that to an existing catch basin here that drains off towards the tech center. The city has an agreement with Brock's Industries that I confirmed with Mr. Bezanson. Brock's has agreed to the same unit costs as last time, which was a big surprise. And I'll add the caveat that the unit cost, there's an escalation for liquid asphalt. So there's the same unit cost for the work and for materials, but liquid asphalt they apply, because that changes every time you go fill up your truck. So that number, there's a little bit of a variable in here. But I'd like to achieve this project and then the rest of the paving. So we did the teacher's lot, we did the student lot. Now what's left is this walkway and then the paving that goes from the student lot behind the loading dock and out to Wakefield Street.
Are those gates open during the day, during school hours?
The big black gates in
Oh,
the
yeah.
courtyard?
Yeah,
The courtyard, no. The courtyard is, and we're not paving the courtyard as part of this. The courtyard is secured anytime there are students in the building. It's a locked gate in the middle and magnetic doors on either side that have swipe card access. That courtyard space is considered part of the secure perimeter of the school because students access back and forth across there. So that gate is locked, and we're not paving in there because I've seen too many plans that maybe someday that courtyard becomes green space. That's been kicked about for years in the district, and never really come to fruition. The pavement in there isn't too bad, it doesn't see a lot of traffic, so we're not gonna raise paving in the courtyard, but basically we wanna pave everything else. So the city agreement unit cost, Brock's Industries, we've gone out and measured everything. We can do the walkway project that I just showed you the picture of with all the new drainage to get rid of the glare eyes, $147.40. The roadway project for the rest of the paving is $110,000. There's a liquid asphalt escalation. Both of these projects combined is about almost 1,300 tons of asphalt at $13 per ton. There's another 16,000 in escalation. So the total of all the work is $275,460. And based on the reallocation of the cash CIP that you're recommending to the full board, I'm hoping that you'll also recommend that we approve Brock's under the existing city unit costs to complete the paving and fix the drainage issues. I've been on the phone with them many times and they've assured me they can do this summer. But they need to know Friday morning after the full board meeting, and we'll get it started and we'll get it done.
So, do we need to make a motion to approve Brock's to do that? I mean, is that
Do
okay?
it.
make a motion for that amount, yeah.
All right, so I'll make a motion to approve Brock's Industries to do the Spalding High School paving project for the amount of $275,460.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion?
So is this in this is this extra from the package?
This is it, this is extra, this is an other, but the 280, if you look at page 2 of that packet, the bottom of that, there's 280 in paving.
Yeah,
This is how I intend to spend that. And this fixes the glare ice problem that I had talked about. The reason I wanted to leave the 280 in that was to
Okay.
achieve this project.
okay, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Anything else on the other? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.